Materials in 3ds Max can be applied not just on an entire object, but also on the smaller parts of an object by working down at the face or polygon level. To do that, you'll build what is referred to as a multi-subobject material. We'll show you how that's done. I'll be using a file named multi-subobject material to demonstrate the technique. You can find it in the working files folder for this chapter. Now, before jumping in, it's important to be aware that there's actually a couple of different ways to build and apply a multi-subobject skin. We're going to be taking a look at only one of those methods here. You can find an alternative method to constructing a multi-subobject material in the subobject mapping video a little later on in this chapter. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the material editor, typing M on our keyboard. Why don't we also enlarge our perspective view by placing our mouse where the viewports come together, holding down the left mouse button, then dragging up and over to the left. This will just give us a little more room in which we can work. Okay, let's go ahead and build our materials first, then we'll get to applying them. Located on the right-hand side of the material editor, directly below the horizontal row of icons, you'll find a button that reads Standard. This button identifies the type of material that you're building. If you click on the button opening the material browser, you'll see that Max actually offers a handful of different material types, Standard simply being one of those choices. From the list, we'll choose Multi-Subobject. A dialog opens asking us what we want to do with the existing material that's currently occupying our selected sample slot. Let's select Discard Old Material and click OK. We can now select the actual number of materials that we're planning on building into the skin that will be applying to the object in our scene. For this example, we'll choose 3. Now that number can always be changed as you're adding in additional skins. Over on the left-hand side, we'll click on the button that reads Set Number. We'll then change the number of materials to 3, then click OK. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you're needing to add more materials, you can simply click Add. If wanting to take a material out of what you're constructing, you could click on the material and then click Delete. Okay, let's start building our materials. Over on the left-hand side of the editor, you'll see the category labeled ID. Directly below that, you'll see the numbers 1, 2, and 3. To build our first skin, we'll click on the None button directly to the right of ID number 1. Max is now asking us what specific type of material we'd like to build. From the browser, let's choose Standard. Okay, let's give this material the name Max Logo. We can then jump up on the Materials Diffuse branch, choosing Bitmap from the browser. We'll then navigate to the Working Files folder, opening up Chapter 11. From the list of maps, we'll then choose Max Logo. Now once you find that, why don't you go ahead and single-click on the name, then in the lower left-hand corner, click on the View button. This is the map that will be loading on our first material. Once taking a look, let's go ahead and load that in. With that map now in place, let's double-click on our sample slot, opening up a larger viewing window. Let's then, to return to the base of our material, click on Go to Parent twice. Now, take a look at that. The checker pattern on our sample ball will enable a single slot to display multiple materials, in this case 3, all in the same material window. Back in the material editor, let's now jump up on our second material. We can do that by clicking on the None button, this time to the right of ID number 2. With the browser opening again, we'll choose Standard. Let's name this material Water and Trees. After we've loaded that in, we'll jump up on the Diffuse branch, choosing a bitmap and seeing if we can't find some outdoor scenery. Staying in the Chapter 11 folder in the Working Files, let's choose the image Water and Trees. Once we have that loaded in, we'll again click on Go to Parent twice. Okay, there's material number 2. Let's do the same thing for our third skin. We'll click on None, then load a standard type material. For material number 3, let's name it Doors. We can then jump up on the Diffuse branch, choosing a bitmap, and go see what we can find. In the dialog, from the Working Files, let's choose the Doors image. That one looks like this. Once we're loaded in place, we'll again click on Go to Parent twice. So those are our 3 materials. Now we can apply what we've made, then make a few polygon selections to identify just exactly what goes where. Close the large viewing window, then let's get down to the polygon level. We'll select our cube, then head to the Modify column. To make our selection, we'll open up the modifier list, choosing a Mesh Select modifier. With that in place, we'll now open up the entry, getting down to the polygon selection level. We can then click on the top of our box to select that specific polygon. To get us in a position where we can now identify the material that we want to apply to this poly, we'll add a material modifier. Below the stack, down in the Parameters category, we'll verify that the material ID number has been set to 1. This will place the Max logo design on this particular poly. Now, to be able to see it in the scene, we'll want to go back and activate our first material in the Material Editor, turning on Show Map in Viewport. That'll then give us a visual display of the Max logo design being mapped on the poly. Using the Mesh Select modifier is only one way to make a sub-object selection. We could have just as easily have used an Edit Poly modifier. Let's do that instead for the second skin. Back in the modifier list, we'll this time choose Edit Poly. We'll open the entry, then press 4 to enter polygon mode. That, you know, is the keyboard shortcut for a polygon selection. With that poly selected, we'll add another material modifier. This time around, we'll want to change the material ID number to 2. That'll position the Water and Trees map on our second material on that poly. To see the map actually in the viewport, we'll have to go back to the Material Editor, click on Go to Parent, then activate the display of that bitmap image. Okay, for our third material, why don't we again switch out our selection modifiers? This time, we'll choose the Edit Mesh simply to show you just how flexible the process is. Back in the list, we'll add the Edit Mesh to our modifier stack. This time, to get down to the polygon level, we'll simply right-click on the screen, choosing Polygon from the menu that opens. Once that's been activated, we'll select the polygon that makes up the left-hand side of our box. We'll add another material modifier to the stack, changing the material ID number to 3. Then back in the Material Editor, we'll have to turn on the Show Material in Viewport option for material number 3. There you go, all 3 materials now in place. Now, if we wanted to make any adjustments, we could easily do that, working just as we would as if we were working on a single material. The only thing we do different is to make sure that we're sitting on the proper skin when we make our changes. Let's say that we want the doors on the left-hand side of the box to point up and down instead of side by side. We'd simply navigate to the doors material and make the adjustment. So we can keep our bearing straight just exactly where we are on our multi-sub-object material, let's go back to the base of the skin. We can do that clicking on Go to Parent. Okay, with all 3 materials named, it's easy to find the doors material. Let's access that skin, getting up on its diffuse map branch. When we're on the material, we can do that by simply clicking on the capital M to the right of the diffuse color swatch. Okay, to change the orientation of the doors, we'll take the W angle to 90. Now, if we wanted, we could also tile the logo on the top a few times. Let's navigate in our material to that specific skin, and we'll jump up on its diffuse map. Let's take the tiling to 3 and 3. Once that's done, we'll orbit our view to get a good look at all 3 sides, and we can render. So that's the multi-sub-object material. Something you'll more than likely find a place to use in virtually every project you create. I'll go ahead and save this out as multi-sub-object material completed if you'd like to go in for a look.